welcome everyone to this afternoon or this morning's webinar, depending on where you're at, Designing a Digitally Driven Patient Access Journey, hosted by Phil and featuring industry partners from Duchesnay USA and US Pharma Consultants. We're very excited for you to join us today to discuss a topic that is so relevant for manufacturers, HCPs, and patients alike heading into 2024. The current state of patient access in the US healthcare system today is really not where it should be. So today we're going to talk through some practical ways that technology can be utilized to improve access to therapy, benefiting all stakeholders in the prescription access journey: patients, HCPs, brands, and the overall healthcare ecosystem alike. So let's start with some introductions. So you've already had an opportunity to hear a little bit from your moderator. So let me go ahead and introduce myself and provide a little bit more background of who I am and what I do at Phil, and then I'll pass it over to our panelists. So I am the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Phil. I lead, you might be under the background noise. Hey, Randy, you want to just go ahead and mute yourself? Thanks, Randy. So my name's Dan Johnson. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing at Phil. I joined about a year and a half ago. I was really drawn to the Phil platform's ability to integrate highly disparate systems to deliver an e-commerce like patient access experience that's responsive to modern expectations and the channel complexity that brands face. I lead product and content marketing efforts at Phil, and I'm very involved in the day-to-day conversations with manufacturers about solution development. And I have an extensive background in the healthcare industry, having previously held roles at McKesson and Cecilia Health, another digital purveyor of life sciences patient support services. So enough about me. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. Claude Andre, why don't you kick us off?
Hi, thanks for the invitation. So I work with Duchesnay Pharmaceutical Group. We have a Duchesnay USA business that's been running in the US for just over 10 years. We launched our first branded products 10 years ago when I was more involved then in the finance and accounting, but quickly dove into the market access, copay strategy, and gross to net modeling and optimizing. Obviously, partnering with different hubs, specialty light hubs across the years since, I would say, 2015. At some point, we kind of saw a couple of those and experienced them on the market, which at some point brought us to Phil, but we'll dive into that later.
Thanks, Claude Andre. And just quickly, what about the potential of technology when it comes to the access journey?
Sorry, there was some background noise. Maybe Randy, if you can mute for a second. Can you repeat the question, please, Dan?
Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. What about the potential of technology really excites you when it comes to improving prescription access?
Yeah, I think that, pharmaceutical industry has gone some ways in closing the gap between, that digital access that we want to talk about today, but there is still a leap to reach. And when you talk to the consumers, the patients, people are already there. So what excites me is that, there are tools out there, and we have, from our company's experience, we have lived the gaps. And, what's exciting for us, obviously, is to make sure we get those patients that receive the script on therapy, because there are so many reasons why people never get on therapy. We'll explore that later, I guess, but, that's what kind of excites me.
Yeah, really appreciate that. And Randy, if you're with us and audio is working, if you could introduce yourself and share a little bit. Randy, unfortunately, I think your audio is really not connecting, so you need to log back in, and we'll happy to have you jump in. Whenever you're able to come back in, audio working on your side. So apologize for the technical difficulties, folks. As you all know, in this day and age, it can be very
Hey
difficult.
Dan, is that better? Can you hear me now?
That is better, Randy. Yeah, much better. We
Yeah,
can hear you loud and clear. So would definitely appreciate it if you could just provide a little introduction
sure.
and share a little bit more about your experience.
Yeah, first of all, I apologize for the technical difficulties. First of all, pleasure to be here. Thank you, Dan. Claude, good to see you as well. Randy Acosta, Managing Director of U.S. Pharma Consulting. U.S. Pharma Consulting really partners with manufacturers offering commercial, regulatory, as well as product launch strategies, really focusing on market and patient access, adherence, as well as outcomes. I've been in the pharma game, don't want to age myself for many years here, but helped pioneer a couple companies into the US, worked at Allergan, have a deep background in commercialization as well as really focusing on patient access and had the opportunity to work closely with Phil and happy to be here today. So thank you.
Well, Randy, glad you could figure out the audio issue, and happy to have you both here for what I think will be a really rich discussion. Randy, just quickly, any areas, maybe two or three where you see technology just presenting tremendous potential for stakeholders involved in the prescription access journey?
Yeah, I think that in today's environment, the utilization of technology is almost mandated. But I think the goal from a pharmaceutical perspective is really compressing the patient onboard time, starting and staying on their prescribed therapies. And with Phil's digital platform, expediting prior auths, which we'll talk about a little bit later, as well as the BI, the process is ultimately improving patient access. And when you get patient access, then you can really focus on adherence and then adherence and, of course, therapeutic gain. So, ideally that is our primary focus. That really needs to be harnessed in today's working environment, especially with the payers.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Speed to therapy is definitely important. Abandonment, certainly, I think as most people in this audience know, increases the longer a patient has to wait for therapy, just like any product, right? The longer you have to wait to get that product, the less likely you are going to ultimately use that product and be satisfied with it. So let's dive right in. Let me first just talk through our agenda. So first, we'll kick off with some research findings and industry trends that shed light on the current state of patient access. Then we'll talk through some of the strategies that we would all recommend based on our experiences to really deliver a digitally driven patient access journey. We'll close with a case study, talking a little bit more about, Randy, if you could just mute when you're not talking, that'd be great too. Still a little background noise, thanks. We'll talk through a case study of the work that Phil and Duchesnay USA have done to offer a alternative channel for patients seeking access to Bungesta and Osfina. And then we should have about 10 minutes towards the end of our discussion for questions. So let's dive right in. So simply put, patient access is a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone involved in the prescription access journey today. Just consider some of these recent statistics that have been sourced and presented by leading industry players such as IQVIA, Cover My Meds, and Freesia. 80% of patients encounter delays in accessing medications they need to manage their health in 2023. 75% of new to brand patients attempting to fill a launch brand are unsuccessful. No wonder why most launches in the industry today fail to hit their mark from a expected revenue and an expected profitability standpoint. Yet despite these troublesome statistics around the difficulty that patients experience, both in getting their medication in a timely manner, as well as actually being able to fill their medication, a very small percentage in the industry today actually opt in and utilize the programs that are designed to help them access therapy and adhere to therapy. So these statistics are probably not that surprising to many in the audience, but let's unpack them a little bit. Gentlemen, what's going on here? Claude Andre, why don't you start here? Are these statistics, kind of representative of your experience in the industry? And how have they factored into your decision making when actually making decisions for your brands at Duchesnay?
No, I think that these three levers are right on point when you talk about, the possible leverages of digital access. First of all, the delay part of the equation, delays can have multiple causes around enrollment, around, prior processing, either the PA being submitted by the hub or the treatment at the office level. So at this very high level of that we're looking at right now, definitely these are areas where we have seen, we have experienced, difficulties in the past in terms of enrollment, for example. Depending on your outreach to patients, I think that the further you are from the prescriber workflow and that patient's workflow within the prescription, right? The more time there is between the patient has that script on hand and goes to the pharmacy, the worse are your chances that the patient actually enrolls. And we go across the spectrum in terms of support programs. How do you make sure that the offers you have out there, whether it's a quick start for a new brand or a bridge for a patient that's switching from another therapy and you have to figure out the coverage, or even a patient access program, right? These are not the type of programs that are integrated across the traditional channels. If you have a patient walking into a pharmacy, you're not sure that he's going to get the best copay offer depending on the switch that pharmacy is operating. So I mean, these findings here, they percolate at different levels on the retail channel, and that's where I think we as a company saw a definite advantage to have a digital experience for the patient, to make sure that we check those boxes for enrollment, new to brand. And I could go long ways in the second box, where I think that the launch brand is the key word here. As access has been more restricted on new to launch, new to market brands, whether on new to market blocks, as those are the types of payer constraints that we have experienced. And it can get frustrating from a manufacturer perspective, definitely. So a lot to say in these findings, but I'll let Randy add.
No, appreciate those call outs. Yeah, Randy, you're obviously very aware of these statistics. How do you typically advise brands to think? Looks like Randy might be still having some audio access issues.
Dan, can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I can. You're coming in a little clearer now. Randy, you're obviously aware of these statistics, right? Your job is to look at the landscape and advise manufacturers of best practices. How do you get manufacturers to consider this and think differently when it comes to bringing a drug to market?
Dan, good question. And Claude, thank you as well. A majority of my clients, and I think it's true across the full spectrum of anybody launching a product in today's environment. Everybody starts off with patient access. The challenges are when you launch a product, coming from a manufacturing perspective as well as a consulting perspective, there's a lot of moving parts. Just logistics and shipments and customs and product just getting into the U.S., of course, getting into your 3PL, distribution, all those wonderful things, launching a sales force. There's a lot of moving parts, so there's a lot of distractions. And in most cases, everybody starts off with patient access. But a lot of times what happens is they focus in strictly on the payers, right? payers are going, well, what's our expectation of access? Okay, 30, 40, 50, 60%. A lot of times it's in the low single digits typically, depending on, of course, the therapeutic product and therapeutic gains behind it. But I would say a majority of the companies really miss that mark in the sense of patient access, especially with these particular hurdles. And I look at hurdles as opportunities, and that's the way I typically position it with my clients, that if you just focus on patient access and the payers, you're missing the mark. Yes, it's an important ingredient. Yes, we have a team of a payer team. We have relationships. We're strategizing. You're doing all those right things. But if you're not really focusing on what your Phil's digital platform can really offer, it really helps minimize these numbers that we're seeing on in the PowerPoint deck. And if you cut these numbers in half, things start to improve patient access, then it goes into adherence, and then you get into more of a successful launch. So highly recommend utilizing the digital campaign to really ensure your first starts with the patient population and helping your field sales team.
I think you've all both called out some really important items. And Randy, I think the idea that market access is a necessary, but not necessarily a sufficient condition to ensure patient access and that patient actually start on therapy is a really, really important thing to call out. And I think it actually segues pretty nicely into our next topic of conversation here, in that why are most channels today falling short in meeting expectations for the most important key stakeholders in the prescription access journey, namely patients, prescribers, and manufacturers? Randy, what you described, the gap that manufacturers often experience of having high formulary placement, but seeing a percentage of covered dispenses at the pharmacy that's not meeting that, I think is indicative of the challenges when it comes to the channels that many manufacturers consider today. So let's start with you, Randy. Maybe you just give your perspective on the retail channel to kick us off. And has the retail channel really kept pace with what's going on from a consumer standpoint, or even how payers are treating products today?
Yeah, I think the simple answer is no. The challenge with retail is, I just look, and again, no disrespect to the retail channel or pharmacy, they're pill factories. Patient time, consulting, all that, consultation, that's a challenge. And then you start to look at what the payers set up. And the analogy I use with a lot of my clients, and I'm a sports guy, and I think Dan and we've talked about this, is that I use ice hockey as an example, and it kind of opens up their eyes a little bit. And the reason I say this is when you get stuck into new market blocks, which is traditional, I love the lines from the payers, hey, show us some velocity. Okay. I have no access, so how do I show velocity, right? So I use the ice hockey example, is that you're on the ice, you're in the game, but you're in the penalty box. How are you going to get shots on goal, right? So really, it really comes down to, the term I use is the 4 A's: access, affordability, adherence, and analytics being key. So by utilizing a digital messaging, digital platform, and/or a hub, light hub or hub services, really helps navigate your success path so you can have dialogue with the payers. And what I mean by that is that, by utilizing, let's say, Phil's platform, which I consider a best-in-class digital solution, it helps us as manufacturers, helps me as a consultant or my firm to really get more shots on goal. And as you get more shots on goal, sales reps start to look at motivation. It's just a cascading event that becomes a winning situation or a winning solution. So, with the landscape changing in the prescriber levels, the payer level, as well as the pharmacy level, the three Ps. Without analytics, it becomes a very heavy lift and a tough challenge. So I think the goal today really is you have to utilize technology just to get a fair or level playing field moving forward, and Phil offers that.
Really appreciate that, Randy. Appreciate the analogy. Claude Andre and I were talking a little bit about the Bruins versus the Canadians playing each other over the weekend. So apt from a personal standpoint, but really a strong analogy for what brands should be thinking about, particularly in that launch phase. But just in general, when it is really important to convert that payer coverage and gain that payer coverage. But Andre, you have a lot of experience, with a variety of different channels and strategies throughout your career. What's your perspective on, some of the reasons, earlier you mentioned kind of the extended time following the point of prescription can be a big challenge. What else would you offer in terms of some reasons why, traditional channels aren't solving the issue of access today?
There are a couple of examples that come to mind. I mean, I can come up with a very good one. I think a couple of good ones. First of all, let's go with an example where you have this, to support the access in launch mode, you will have a cash offer for a copay program, right? Obviously, you want to reach as many patients as possible. You can use different copay vendors, but how do you make sure that every pharmacy has that copay benefit or opts in? Basically, obviously, it's impossible, right? So you can have that rep doing his job, detailing, and patient gets on therapy, goes to the pharmacy, coverage is not there yet, doesn't even get the cash offer. Those are the types of that they don't count as shots on goal, right? Just to support Randy's theory.
Yep.
And you guys pulled it in different way. You put it forward in different words, but market access coverage is one thing. Pull through is where you win the game. And by having a digital portal platform, and most importantly, a good payer contracts within your network. That's where you can leverage your commercial wins or your commercial coverage. And that's, going back to your question, Dan, on, our experience. Well, we have partnered with different more regional hubs in the past. And we found that, and also through our RFP last year, some, other SP hubs, SP lights, when you dig into the actual payer contracting landscape, some will miss the Medicaid contracts. Some will miss one of the big three payers, Optum, ESI, Caremark. So this is very important. All of a sudden, you lose one of those contracts. That's 25% of your commercial coverage that just won't get that benefit, that commercial benefit. So there's no one silver bullet, but at the end of the day, you do have to check those boxes to make it easy for the patient to access the therapy. It's to get coverage, pull through.
Yeah, thanks for calling that out. And I think it definitely ties in really well to, Randy's point of, ensuring that you're maximizing shots on goal. If you're thinking about designing an alternative channel strategy, you definitely want to make sure you're maximizing plan contract coverage for your patients. So let's dive in here and get a little bit more practical. Thank you, Claude Andre and Randy, for offering your perspective on some of these macro issues that are impacting patient access and brand performance here in 2023, and certainly will continue to do so in 2024. So I think, as you've heard from both Claude Andre and Randy, that while patient access is a challenge, the story here is really not one of doom and gloom. There are opportunities to structure a channel strategy or an access strategy that responds to these challenges and can really drive improvement when it comes to patients actually getting on therapy, staying on therapy, solving issues for HCP, so that they feel comfortable prescribing the therapy, knowing the patient is going to get access on it, and ultimately benefiting the brand from a financial performance standpoint, which, the reality is brands, need to, be sustainable to be able to continue to offer that therapy to support patients that really need it to get better. So strategies to think about for brands going into 2024, and we'll unpack each one of these in subsequent slides and get Claude Andre's and Randy's perspective on it. But let me just lay them out here. The first is, brands should really think about delivering an access experience that mirrors what consumers experience in other industries, whether it be finance or retail or entertainment. It's almost 2024, folks, right? Everybody is used to having very simple, user-friendly experiences, typically through their smartphones in this day and age. Secondly, and this came up, I think, a little bit in the conversation earlier, prior authorizations are a huge bottleneck when it comes to patient access. They can lead to delays to therapy, prescription abandonment. Brands really need to do everything that they can in their power to support prescribers and support pharmacies with supporting patients overcoming the prior authorization obstacle. Thirdly, and Randy hit on this, the importance of data and analytics. Field teams in this day and age, whether it be reimbursement managers and more so, even field sales teams, they really need to have access to real-time data. They need to understand what's going on in the prescription journey to be able to reach out to prescribers to say, hey, there's a lot of prior authorizations outstanding. Can you check on those and do what you need to do to get those submitted so the patient can start on therapy? And then finally, payer variance in this day and age is very significant. Even within a payer, different BIN, PCN combinations, there may be vastly different responses. Brands really need to be looking at how payers are responding to their products and doing what they can to be able to tailor and adjust dispense workflows to respond to the way that payers are treating their products. So we're going to unpack all of these things. Let's dive in first to the first tenet, namely strive to deliver an e-commerce-like prescription access experience. So this statistic, I think, is pretty telling. 90% of patients in 2023 want to manage their healthcare leveraging technology. And this is inclusive of accessing and refilling their prescriptions. Randy, what's your perspective on this? And do you think that technology in and of itself is something that offers value, or is there more to it than that? Randy, you may still be on mute.
Oh, I'm loving Zoom today, so I apologize.
No worries, man.
Yeah, hey, I have to turn it off for the feedback. So, needless to say, Dan, great question. One of my personal philosophies, especially with my organization and what I share and try to enlighten my client base is, it's really patient first, digital first, not patient first, digital second, not patient first, digital third, not, it's a tough statement if you think about it. And patient first, digital first. Well, they're tied for first. Well, absolutely. And the challenge is really educating our audience, and our audience could be commercial ops, it could be sales ops, it could be the sales organization, it could be the external stakeholders like payers and so on. But really need to have an operating model that integrates data and leverages technology, but more importantly, it really enhances the culture and commitment of the payer's journey, but really the payer as it aligns with its with the HCPs. And if you integrate that with technology, you are ahead of the game. So, the simple answer to your question is yes. And I'll discuss this in a little greater detail because, just recently launched a glaucoma product and there was a lot of pushback, and I'll dive into that a little bit later. But to answer your question, yes, it's absolutely a valuable tool, but you really have to put patient first and digital first and put them together. And I think you're ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and Claude Andre, thanks, Randy. I really appreciate that. In your experience, how do you, and if you could just mute Randy, that'd be great. How do you set the right expectations with patients, when you're introducing a digital modality or really any modality from that matter? What's been your experience with that?
Yeah, well, it's been interesting because on the one hand, we launched two brands with Phil this year, one for pregnant women and one for postmenopausal women, right? So you would think that both definitely may not interact the same way when it comes to their, e-commerce experience or savviness. But at the end of the day, I mean, it is surprising how positive the response has been from both young to patients that are older women. But that's just across the board. I think that there's a good reason why the number one was to offer the e-commerce like experience is because the market is already there, and it's not limited to millennials at all. So to go back to your question on managing expectation, it's more about us being more in tune with where patients already are than having to manage their expectation to make this leap forward. They have already made that leap, and COVID has been an accelerator for this. You just have to look at don't have to re-explain e-commerce here, but it took a great leap in COVID. So there you go.
No, appreciate that, and I think my own experience definitely get a lot of questions around does this make sense for my patient population? It skews older, and I think it's really important what you called out. That people, everyone, all ages, want a simple experience, right? And then technology is something that is pretty ubiquitous. I mean, smartphone penetration in the U.S. is well above 90% at this point, right? So everybody, has that access. And one thing I do just want to call out, from a Phil standpoint, one thing that we do to make it similar to an e-commerce experience via our platform is we offer essentially a subscription, prescription refills. So when patients opt into the Phil platform and choose to approve their copay, they're opted into an informed auto refill process. You can see that on the right side, so that they don't have to go through that extra hassle to be able to get the prescription that they need to stay healthy. They get notified that their prescription is going to be shipped to them at that upcoming month, assuming it's written for that. And if they take action, want to pause it, they can do that, but they don't have to, and they will still continue to get their prescription. So there's no need to call in or to drive to the pharmacy. It just shows up right on their doorstep. So let's keep moving here. The second tenet, automate the prior authorization process with technology. 75% of HCPs in 2023 identify prior authorizations as the biggest opportunity for technological solutions. And one reason I think I found that interesting was that, e-prior authorizations are not new and novel. They have been around for a little bit. Yet still this year in 2023, HCPs are saying that PAs are the biggest opportunity for technological solutions. Why do you think that is? Either of you want to chime in and start?
Yeah, well, I can pick it up, from very simply put, these are processing PAs, takes the prescriber and puts them out of her or his usual workflow. This means delay for his practice, either the office assistant. So the closer your PA process interaction as a manufacturer through your hub, the closer you can stay to the prescriber's workflow, the better chances the outcomes are on those. So, that's kind of where my stance is.
Randy, any perspective on your end?
Yeah, in fact, I think in today's environment, we as an industry want to get closer to the patient and utilizing, technology to enhance the capabilities of access. because the challenge today is, with pushback with prior auths, is now the physician gets frustrated, the sales reps get frustrated, and then the patients get frustrated. And as I shared with you earlier in the presentation, is it's really our goal is compressing that patient onboarding time and the starts, and then starts turn into stays, as I shared with you in the digital platform of Phil, really expedites the prior auth as well as the BI process. And that in itself will make the patient experience better. And then there's less frustration with the reps when they're talking and working within the physician office. Because the classic, I carried a bag, but bad news. I think it was well before cell phones. Is that the number one complaint when I was out detailing products is, hey, is this stuff available? That's the first thing that comes out of most physicians and offices. And in today's environment, utilizing technology, the reps now can say, hey, doc, don't have to worry about it. Utilize this particular process or utilize this platform, and your patient is guaranteed to have product mailed to them. It sets a level of comfort within the, I guess, the prescription journey at this point, not just the patient journey. So your platform definitely helps excel the prior auth, and it really converts it from, in reality, what used to take days is now can turn into minutes, and minutes, an hour or two. Just to me, it seems very logical, and as well as a progression of where we're at in today's environment.
No, I appreciate that, Randy. And Claude Andre, anything, strategically that you might offer in terms of, how your organization has thought about the prior authorization process and, things that you think have been beneficial to improve it and just generally improve outcomes so patients can actually start on therapy?
Yeah, well, I think that e-processing PAs is one thing. Then it's the whole business rules that you build around PA processing, whether it's on adjusting the PA timer. I think we'll discuss that later. But this has to be brand specific, depending on, is this an acute treatment? Is this long-term therapy? And also, you mentioned it earlier about the payer response. There are different reasons why drugs require prior authorization. Know those reasons, know those PA criteria from your top payers, so you can dictate your hub to have to make sure that very simple thing. But do we have all the information on the enrollment form? Did the prescriber put in the right ICD code so that your PAs go through easily? That's the type of information, going back to the field offering. That's the type of leverage we can get from that information, and then we can measure our PA outcome to pinpoint, okay, well, what's working in this territory? What can we apply to the other territories? Why is the PA submission rate? So it's about, again, oftentimes measuring outcomes and adjusting your levers around your PA processing, whether it's PA timers, whether it's the PA processing itself, in educating, having your teams educate specific prescribers for which we can see constantly that there's some lack in missing information. Obviously, compliance is everything. There's things you cannot propose as we're talking about ICD codes here. But at the end of the day, when you have the information, we can have better PA processing programs in place.
I think that segues pretty nicely into our next strategy or core tenet here, and that is providing field teams with real-time visibility into the access journey. 80% of HCPs are more likely to prescribe a therapy if they know how to expedite the PA process. I think that's unsurprising given the burden that the PA process places on HCPs and office staff today. Randy, you mentioned analytics as being one of the core tenets that you believe are critical to be able to successfully orchestrate a successful patient access program. Do you think that most teams today are doing enough to get this data in the hands of individuals that actually can take action against it? Or is this something that more brands need to be thinking about? What does the spectrum look like in your experience, and how do you advise brands in terms of how to leverage data?
Well, we all know that, and again, great question, Dan. Data is king, right? How you utilize the data, and it really comes down to the disciplines within the organization. Filtering into sales ops. I'm going to steal a line from you, Dan. In today's environment, you really don't rent videos from Blockbuster anymore. So, this little thing called Netflix, you push a button, here you go, right? But to answer your question, the use of and equipping, and I'm seeing more of this as an evolution. I wouldn't really call it revolutionary, but more evolutionary, is that most companies are really starting to capture this real-time data through your digital platform, and then utilize this data, filter it back into, and I guess, different dashboards within the organization. But most importantly, is putting it in the hands of the sales team, which ultimately helps increase sales success. So they're really watching more of the prescription journey, and then, of course, the patient journey. So again, what I do like is that the ease of data and how it's used. And again, I was at a couple national sales meetings, and to hear field sales teams coming up saying thank you, never had this experience, or they're not familiar with this type of process. So I think your platform fits extremely well in today's environment.
Yeah, one thing I will just call out there to provide a little bit more clarification about our field rep portal is that it's something that alerts reps, whether that be reimbursement managers or even field sales, when something gets stuck in the process, so that they can quickly, they're quickly notified that there's an issue with a prescription getting stuck in the process, and they just push a button to send a fax that details out every prescription that prescriber has outstanding in the fill platform. The benefit there is they're not chasing scripts. They can still focus on creating demand for the product, but they can also help move things along from a patient aspect. So, and Rand, if you could just mute, that'd be great. Our fourth and final tenet or strategy to consider here is that, and I think Claude Andre has touched on this a lot, so it might be good for him to jump off on this, is brands should really be analyzing the payer response to their product to tailor dispense business rules. This is something that in a typical channel, say retail, very difficult to start to respond at the payer level based on how individual plans are treating your product. And then you'll just see there on the right side, and I think Claude Andre brought this up a little bit, brands should really be thinking about a PA timer strategy, right? Knowing that if a PA waits too long with an HCP or sits too long with an HCP, the rate of abandonment just increases pretty significantly, right? So brands should really be taking this information and responding to develop workflows that can help patients get on therapy while hopefully still pursuing coverage and a PA in parallel. So Claude Andre, yeah, any more perspective on this? It seems like this is something that has been particularly beneficial for you and that you have a perspective on. So it would be great to share that with the audience.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is a super important slide because this is where you do the heavy lifting. This is what I mean when I talk about, what are the levers that you put around your PA processing to make sure that at the end of the day, you are making optimal use of the time that you through which you process the PA. So obviously, first of all, having in mind the abandonment rates that go up as time erodes, having a PA timer on your brand I think is a must. That can be, from 3 to 5 to 6 days, depending on your expected outcome. But on the other side, once you know that, on the payer side of things, even though you might have, preferred or non-preferred status with one of the big threes, Zinc, Ascent, It comes down to a plan level, how each individual plan, as you know, many of them, you would say in the ESI Ascent world, over 50%, in the Zinc world, over 60%, are custom clients that make their own decisions, right? Some of those customs might be have a large proportion of your patients insured under their benefits. So to be able to rank them by payer can help you adjust your payer response. For example, in this example, which is not our product, but still, you know that this particular bin of a BCBS employer plan, usually rejects your product, right? What are those rejection reasons? If it's a PA required code 75, for example, for our brands, what we realized at some point, even with rejections with a code 70, with PA for medical necessity, for example, you can get good outcomes on those PAs. So, first you have your PA timer, then you look at the plan level, and then for each plan, measure the outcomes that you have for those codes that are there. And this is the type of information that we gain from, partnering with Phil. It starts with the digital patient journey, but on the back end is where we can do all the heavy lifting with the data we get on that, PA journey.
Thanks, Claude Andre. And Randy, a couple things for you. How significant is the variance, from your perspective, from a market access perspective, in terms of the way that plans, treat products in this day and age? It might be important too to just touch on kind of the importance of a sustainable free goods offering, right? And the challenges brands run into if that utilization is not what they want it to be.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the challenge there is that, as Claude mentioned, there's many layers to the custom plans, and then there's so many moving parts that you really have to dive into it and really manage it at, I wouldn't say a micro level, but a really close level. And some of the challenges is really utilizing that data. Key is leveraging predictable analytics to really power adherence as well as the patient journey. We can almost spend an hour or a day on this particular topic, but just to not to oversimplify it, is without having that visibility, you may have your success rate goes down dramatically. It's just, again, I don't want to oversimplify it, but with the analytics, the touch of analytics and understanding all the moving parts within the plans, you start to integrate, and then you start to have a stronger message coming back to your payers, and more importantly, back for the patients and the patient journey and the prescription journey.
Yep, definitely. I think there's definitely power for all key stakeholders in terms of having access to data that can be translated to insights to inform decision making. So to close out, thank you for that, Randy. Just wanted to highlight a little bit of the work that Phil and Duchesnay have done together, and just talk a little bit more about our work in the form of a case study. So, Claude Andre, in general, why did you think an alternative channel strategy was relevant, and why did you ultimately choose to integrate Phil for Bongesta and Ostina?
Yeah, so from 2015 to 2022, we had partnered with different hubs, most of them regionals. Each had their own struggles at some point, either on enrollment, on plan coverage. So at one point, we when I took the role of directorship in 2021, one of my key projects was to drive an RFP and to really scope the whole market for specialty light hubs and digital hubs as well, as those have been coming into the market in the past 4 or 5 years. So the key driver for us was the message we were the key objective was to maximize the pull through on the coverage we have. And where we have no coverage, well, make sure that the patient gets the lowest possible out of pocket, right? all of that in a gross to net that makes sense for our company. As for example, providing a cash copay assistance at a pharmacy level, when you carve in the wholesaler fees, the pharmacy reimbursement, it's really tough to keep a margin on those, right? So here we are. After a 6 months RFP, we decided to partner with Phil a year ago, a little bit over a year ago. We launched in January of this year for Bongesta, and then on April 1st for Osfina. And as I kind of alluded to during our talk today, these are the key statistics that we decided to share with you guys. Having the digital experience and everything we mentioned today that's working on the background, definitely the enrollment is the first part that shot up. Going from a phone enrollment to a text message, then navigator enrollment without the patient having to download an app or any fuzzy stuff like that. That's been really positive for us. And then at the later end of the spectrum in terms of coverage, having the field partner pharmacies covering over 95% of payers, well, we got better pull through for our commercial agreements. So I mean, in a nutshell, that's been our experience so far. It's been quite positive.
Any areas where you would like to see the program go in 2024? Areas of opportunity.
Yeah, well, I think that this is going to be, we started to, align our, incentive plans and provide more data to the field team, to the sales team. We are going to do some deeper digging on our side at a very more granular level on the territory side of things. But on general, I think that, the program workflows we had from day one, Phil has been really nimble in adjusting our micro processes in there. We talk about PA time, we talk about, providing us with some extra layers of information when needed. So all in all, I think we are good to go for 2024.